Hey everyone, my name is Nikki Young, and this is Serial Napper, the #1 true crime podcast for naps. I'm back with another true crime story to lull you to sleep, or perhaps to give you nightmares. If he catches me, he will make me disappear. That was one of the last things wife and mother of 3 Amy Mullis allegedly told the man she was having an affair with just a few months before she was found lying face down with a corn rake sticking out of her back. Amy would die from her injuries received in what was initially believed to be a freak farm accident. However, during her autopsy, it was revealed that Amy had sustained 6 stabs to her back when the corn rake only had 4 prongs, meaning the corn rake entered her back more than once. Police believed she was murdered, and they were looking directly at her husband, Todd Mullis, as suspect number 1. However, Todd had an alibi, the couple's 13-year-old son. So was Amy Mullis really murdered, or was this some kind of freak accident? And if she was murdered, was it her husband who did it? He did have an alibi, and there were other people on the farm that day who may have wanted to hurt Amy. We're going to go through it all, so let's jump right in. Amy was born on January 23, 1979 in Ames, Idaho, but she grew up in the area of Eldora. She graduated from Eldora New Providence High School in 1997, and then she went on to complete nursing school at Kirkwood Community College. When she was just 24 years old, Amy met Todd Mullis while she was enjoying an afternoon at the Delaware County Fair. He was 3 years older than her, and Todd was already a very accomplished young man who owned his own farm. He was passionate about everything to do with farming, and he worked really hard to successfully operate his own. Amy was an outdoorsy kind of girl who enjoyed hunting, fishing, camping, so the couple had a lot in common. It was a bit of a whirlwind romance, with Amy and Todd marrying in 2004, just a year after their first meeting. Because Todd was already well established, Amy moved out onto Todd's farm in Earlville, Iowa. While Todd would have preferred for Amy to help out on the farm, she already had her own successful career in healthcare, so she continued to work as a registered nurse. Together, they would have 3 beautiful children, and they were a very close family unit. The kids would often help out with farm chores on the weekends and after school, instilling in them a sense of hard work and dedication. Eventually, Todd was able to grow his operations to 3 farms, which included 2 hog barns on the main farm where they also lived. While on the outside, the Mullises appeared to be an idyllic farming family, things weren't so great in the marriage between Amy and Todd. In 2013, Amy began an affair with a coworker. Todd would find out and later say that it was devastating. Finding out his wife was cheating on him absolutely shattered him, even more so when he learned that his eldest son was also aware of the affair. But they were committed to working it out. Todd said it only brought he and his son closer, while he and Amy entered couples counseling. To try to fix the relationship and reconcile, Amy left her job in healthcare and became a full-time stay-at-home mom. It's alleged that this was much more of a demand made upon Amy by Todd than it was Amy's decision. She very much loved her nursing job, and she felt like she was now being controlled by her husband. But life carried on, with Amy now spending much of her time caring for the children and helping out with the farm duties. By 2018, things were once again very tense in the family. That summer, Amy began to have another affair, this time with someone close to the farm. She began seeing Jerry Frasher, a married man who was responsible for the farm's hogs operation. The affair came to light when Todd received a phone bill and he noticed the numerous, extensive phone calls between Amy and Jerry. When he confronted her with the phone bill, she denied that anything was going on between herself and Jerry. Besides, Jerry was a married man with children. Todd didn't believe Amy, especially since she had already had one affair before. So he decided to contact Jerry's wife about the cheating allegations, and Jerry's wife basically brushed him off. She didn't believe that her husband Jerry was stepping out on her, and she thought that Todd's conspiracy theory was nuts. After taking some time to think about it, Todd realized that he may have been overreacting, so he called back a few days later to retract his allegations and to apologize. Jerry's wife wasn't the only person he spoke to regarding his suspicion that Amy was cheating. He also questioned Amy's stepmother and one of their mutual friends about what information they might have. Neither of them confirmed if Amy was in fact cheating, but they did suggest that perhaps the two of them would be better splitting up and getting a divorce because clearly there was no longer any trust between them. The friend would later recall the surprising response that Todd gave them. He allegedly said, quote, "I have worked for this farm since I was 11, and I will not give it up." Eventually, Amy would confide in this mutual friend that she was in fact having an affair with Jerry Frasher, and she was thinking about leaving Todd. Not necessarily for Jerry, just to get out of the relationship and to be on her own for a while. She had married and had children young, and she hadn't had the opportunity to fully explore the world or discover who she was because she was busy raising babies and working on the farm. At times, she felt almost like a slave, having to give up her career she loved in order to help her husband with his dreams. Amy secretly began looking for jobs and somewhere that she might be able to live on her own once she found the strength to leave her husband. She knew that Todd was not going to make this easy for her. He had stated to her on more than one occasion that he didn't want a divorce because he would then have to give her half of everything he owned, including the farm that he had built from the ground up. One of Amy's friends reported that she confided in her about how terrified she was to leave Todd because he'd kill her if he ever discovered that she was having an affair or leaving him. She was also worried about her children and what they might think of her, especially her eldest son, who was really close to his father. Still, she secretly carried on with her plan to leave Todd, even asking her brother if he might be able to store some furniture for her that she could later use once she secured her own place. By the fall, Amy was still married to Todd and living at the farm. On November 6th, she had a medical procedure performed, and it required limitations to her physical activity. She was told by the doctor that she needed to rest for a few days, and she was restricted from lifting anything heavier than 10 pounds, meaning she was really limited with what she could do to help out with the farm work. On November 10th, a friend texted her to see how she was feeling, to which she responded with, quote, "Thanks. Okay, things still very tense around here. Just not sure of anything anymore." This would be one of the last text messages Amy Mullis would ever send. Despite still recovering from her surgery, Amy prepared breakfast that morning for her children and her husband. After they finished eating, Todd and his eldest son, the 13-year-old, they got started on farm work in the large hog barn, which was about the size of a football field. Just after 10 a.m., Amy sent a text message to Jerry, the farmhand that she was having an affair with. The text message said, "Do you know what I'm doing today? Cleaning fucking light fixtures in the barn. WTF." Then she went to the hog barn where her son and husband were, and she started to clean these said light fixtures. And I fully understand that having a farm requires long hours and really hard work. But Amy, she still wasn't feeling her best after having her surgery. From the way this text message reads, it sounds like she was being ordered to clean the light fixtures by her husband, and she didn't really want to be doing it. To clean them, she had to stand on top of a 5-gallon bucket in order to reach them. Amy was lightheaded, and she appeared to be unsteady standing on top of the bucket. Her son and husband were busy preparing the barn for a new litter of hogs to arrive. When Todd noticed that she was kind of swaying back and forth on this bucket while trying to clean the lights, he told her that she should probably step down and take a break. He asked Amy if on her way to rest, she could go to the red shed to get a pet carrier. He was going to be operating heavy machinery that day, and their barn cat recently had a litter of kittens, and he wanted to secure them in this carrier so that they didn't accidentally get injured in the process. Again, in my opinion, he should have told her to stay in bed that day and rest because this was her first day out of the house and she was already having dizzy spells. But he asks her to bring him this large pet carrier that weighed around 15 pounds. It was heavier than what she was supposed to be lifting. Amy left for the red barn to retrieve the carrier, and Todd and his son continued working. A short while later, the father and son took a water break at the front office, which was located at the front of the hog barn. Todd noticed that the pet carrier wasn't sitting out front of the barn where he had told his wife to put it, so he asked his son to go have a look for his mom. Maybe she decided it was too heavy and just gave up. He wasn't really sure, or maybe she just needed some help. Moments later, he heard his son shouting for him, so he ran over to the red barn to see what was wrong. And this is when he saw his wife, Amy, lying in a crouched position, face down, with a corn rake sticking out of her back. She had been impaled. Todd told his son to go get the truck so that they could drive to the hospital, while he tried to carry Amy out of the barn to help her to see if she had a pulse. But he couldn't because that rake, it was still lodged in her back and it kept getting caught on boxes of fertilizer. This was a really small, tight space, so he had to remove the rake first. When his son arrived with the truck, he picked Amy up and he put her in it and they all drove to the hospital. While on the way, Todd called 911 and he told them that his wife Amy had basically fallen back into this corn rake. They told him to pull over and attempt CPR while they dispatched an ambulance to meet him on the side of the road, which he did. He did this until the ambulance arrived.
Delaware County 911, what's the address of your emergency room? Hello?
I'm on the road. I'm out of breath.
Okay. What's going on, sir?
My wife, she's not responsive. I don't know if she's hurt. I don't know. She was halfway out the door. I sent my son over to check on her. He's yelling at me, and she looks gone.
Okay. We'll get an ambulance going in just a second.
I'm headed there. I grabbed her and threw her in the truck. And my son pulled me.
Okay, you're headed to the hospital, and she's in your vehicle?
Yes, and there's no pulse.
There's no pulse. Can you pull over?
I can.
Okay, how about you pull over?
Can I do anything? She's just, there's nothing.
Okay, what is your name, sir?
Todd Mullis. You feel anything? Amy.
Okay, sir, what happened that she's not conscious or breathing?
She fell on a fork. I had put a fork on her. It was an old fork sitting in somewhere, and then she was halfway out of the barn. Like she was calling to get out, and then took and yelled, and I ran over there, and she's laying there. She is not responding.
Okay.
Come on.
Sir, do you feel comfortable doing CPR?
I can try. I'll try anything.
Is she flat on the... Are you able to get her flat across maybe the seat?
Yeah, 1, 2. 1, 2.
Go on.
Come on, respond. She's cold. Come on. Come on.
Paramedics transported Amy to the hospital, where sadly she was pronounced dead on arrival. When Todd spoke with the police about what had happened to his wife, he told them that he had found her in the barn with a rake in her back, but he had no idea how it happened. He just kind of assumed that she must have fallen into the rake, which was standing upright in the barn, because again, she was dizzy that day. She was a little unsteady. Maybe she went in there to get the pet carrier and she stumbled and fell back onto the rake. But there was one problem. The corn rake only had 4 prongs, and Amy had 6 puncture wounds to her back. The pathologist found at least 2 different wound paths, possibly even 3, meaning she was stabbed with the rake more than once. The wounds were also so deep that the rake had penetrated her back, ruptured her breast implants, and then exited out of her front chest. Her lungs and liver were also punctured. The medical examiner also noted that Amy had injuries to her chin, her cheekbone, her knees, and knuckles of each hand. The injuries to her hands appeared to be defensive wounds consistent with a struggle. This freak farm accident was now a murder investigation. When the police called Todd in for an interview and asked him how his relationship with Amy was, he described it as a very healthy marriage. He said they were tight, they had great communication, and they hardly ever argued, which everyone who was close to the couple knew was an outright lie. Later, he would admit that Amy had an extramarital affair with an employee of the farm. He had found out about the affair when he reviewed her cell phone records and saw that the two of them had been in constant communication. Todd said he went and had a conversation with the man, his wife, and Amy, all of whom denied that there was even an affair happening. So he said he kind of just let it go and it was never discussed again. When the interviewer began to suggest that they believed he killed his wife, Todd responded with, quote, "You want me to confess to something I didn't do." He denied having any involvement in his wife's death, and he had an alibi. That day, he had been working in the hog barn with his eldest son, the 13-year-old, while his wife was out at the red barn retrieving that cat carrier. His son, who was sadly the one who had discovered his mother's body, would give a witness statement in support of his father's alibi. He said that the two were in the barn together the entire time and he never saw his father leave. The police would speak with Jerry, the man that Amy had allegedly been having this affair with, and he did confirm that the two were romantically involved, and the relationship continued until about a week before Amy's death. They would meet maybe once a week, sometimes twice, for sex, sometimes at the farm and sometimes at a motel room. According to Jerry, Amy was terrified of her husband, and at one point she had even confessed to him that she believed if she tried to leave Todd, he would, quote, make her disappear. Jerry also said that he was fearful for his safety if Todd ever discovered the affair, which is why he and Amy had both denied it when they were confronted about it. The interviewer asked Jerry where he was on November 10th, the day that Amy had died, and he said that he was at home, about 45 minutes away with his son watching college football on TV. Of course, they wanted to verify that information, so they looked through his phone records for that day, and they found that there was cell phone activity at around 10:45 a.m., 11:45 a.m., and around 12:45. And this phone, it had also pinged close to his home. So authorities eliminated Jerry and his wife as suspects in Amy's murder. However, police believed that they had enough to establish a motive for Todd to murder his wife. They took a closer look at Todd and Amy's relationship, and they discovered that the couple hadn't slept in the same bed for the last 5 months. So this perfect, healthy relationship that Todd had described, it just wasn't true. They also found that at times, Todd was said to be very controlling. When they interviewed one of Amy's longtime friends, they learned that anytime she left the house, she basically needed to document where she was going. So she had to tell him exactly where she was going and exactly when she would be back. This friend also said in the weeks leading up to Amy's death, she had become increasingly paranoid that her husband might kill her if he found out about her cheating. She even went as far as to tell this friend that if she were found dead, Todd did something to her, and if they couldn't find her, there was a specific area of woods where they should look for her body. Amy felt like a prisoner in her own home and completely under Todd's control. Investigators would execute a search warrant at the farm and at the home that Todd and Amy shared. They confiscated all of Todd's electronics, including an iPad that he owned. When they reviewed the data on the iPad, they discovered that someone had used Todd's Google account on the iPad to search terms such as, quote, did ancient cultures kill adulterers, thrill of the kill, thrill of the hunt, famous, quote, no thrill like that of hunting man, once you hunt man, you will always feel the thirst, what happens to cheaters in history, killing unfaithful women, what to do with large open chest wounds, and organs in the body. They also confiscated a camera system, which included 2 cameras that recorded pretty much the majority of the property. Unfortunately, there wasn't a camera pointed at the red barn where Amy's body had been found. However, there was a camera which pointed at the yard space between the red barn and the hog barn where Todd had been working that day. When they reviewed the footage, they found all of the recordings from September 11th to October 29th. But then there was an empty gap between October 30th to November 10th, the day that Amy was killed. It was really strange for just that particular week to be missing, but unfortunately, forensics couldn't determine whether or not the footage had been deleted or if it just simply wasn't recorded during this time. Still, this was enough for the police to arrest Todd Mullis for the murder of his wife, 39-year-old Amy Mullis. They believed that Todd had found out about the affair and how Amy was now getting ready to leave him. He knew that through a divorce, he had a ton to lose, including the farms that he had built from the ground up. And as he had stated before, he was not going to let that happen, so the police believed that's why he had killed her. He even set it up so that his son would be the one to find the body when he went to go check on Amy in the red barn. But what about Todd's alibi, that he was with his son the whole time in the hog barn, which was backed up by his 13-year-old son? Days before Todd was to go on trial, his son kind of altered his story. So initially the son claimed that he was with his father all day, so his dad just could not have snuck out to kill Amy. But now, the son was kind of admitting that he had lost sight of his dad just a few times when he went to go get a drink of water at the front of the barn, but he said that this would have been only less than a minute each time. With the physical evidence showing that the corn rake had entered Amy's back more than once, maybe as many as 3 times, it was determined that Amy was murdered. This was no freak accident, according to the pathologist. Todd's defense team never even tried to argue that this wasn't a murder. The question was whether or not Todd was the one who did it. His saving grace was going to be his alibi and the statement by his eldest son, but now with that story slightly altered, it was a huge hit to his defense. Still, his son swore that he never saw any blood on his father at any time, and he was only out of his sight for periods of less than a minute, so not long enough to go and kill Amy and then come back clean. According to Todd's defense team, there was absolutely no way that he would have had enough time to go to the red barn, stab Amy with the corn rake, and then get back to the hog barn without a drop of blood on his clothing. And the prosecution had a big problem. There was no physical evidence tying Todd to the murder. What they had was a motive, the missing security camera footage, and then those iPad searches. There wasn't any fingerprints or DNA recovered from the scene that would actually tie Todd to the murder. At trial, Todd would take the stand in his own defense, highly unusual in a high-profile murder trial like this. He was questioned about why he didn't call 911 right away, and he responded with, quote, I just wanted to help her. I just wanted to, let's go to the hospital. There's something wrong. I'm a doer, I guess. I wanted to help. I was in reaction mode. I wanted to get her to the hospital. When asked about the missing security camera footage, he said that he believed his cats had accidentally knocked down the antennas. He said he didn't notice it until the day after the murder when he was asked if there were any cameras on the property, and then he looked and he found the antennas knocked down and hanging by the floor. He had no idea at that point how long that they hadn't been recording, but it is interesting because there was a full week of footage missing, not just the day that Amy died. So if someone had deleted it, they deleted the whole week of footage, not just that one day. This does kind of add some validity to what Todd is saying, that it was just accidentally knocked down and he didn't notice it until he was asked about the cameras when they were investigating Amy's death. So what about those searches that were done on his iPad while logged into his Google account? He denied ever making those searches, and he said that several people, including Amy, frequently used his iPad. The defense presented an alternate suspect that also had a possible motive for killing Amy. The man she was having an affair with, Jerry Frasher. According to friends of Amy, she thought that they might actually have a future together, and she had even mentioned wanting to marry him someday. But Jerry never had any intention of ever leaving his wife and children. For her, it was a romantic relationship with feelings, but for Jerry, it was just casual sex. As Amy was getting closer to divorcing Todd, Jerry may have gotten nervous about his own family falling apart and decided that he needed to get rid of Amy. It's true, he did have an alibi for that day, and records showed that at least his cell phone was at his home, located 45 minutes away at the time of the murder. However, the defense, they argued that most people know to leave your cell phone at home if you're committing a murder, because that's one of the first things that they're going to look at. They're going to track your cell phone. Todd's trial lasted a week, and then the jury sat for deliberations. It was a really difficult trial because there wasn't any physical evidence that tied Todd to the killing. Half of the jury believed that Todd was guilty, while the other half was mostly undecided, at least initially. They had to determine Todd Mullis's fate, and all they had was circumstantial evidence. After around 7 hours of deliberating, the jury decided that Todd was guilty of first-degree murder. Todd would address the court one last time, saying, quote, "I did not do this. This is supposed to be America, where you shouldn't have to prove your innocence. I thought it was innocent until proven guilty. I feel this was the other way around, and I was a faithful and loving husband." Was that like a Freudian slip? I don't know. Todd was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Still to this day, he maintains his innocence, and he's working with his lawyers to try to get a new trial. They believe that there were missteps in the first trial, and they question whether Amy was even murdered at all, or if that call was made too quickly. They also question how the 13-year-old eldest son's testimony changed over time, how he had initially said that he never lost sight of his dad, and how that story changed only after extensive interviews with the lawyer of his mother. Either way, it really did put this son in a difficult situation, whether he's supposed to defend his father, whether he's supposed to support his mother, whether he thinks his father's guilty. I can't imagine. So was Amy Mullis murdered, or was this a freak accident? Did her husband, Todd, kill her, or could it have been someone else? I'll be following this case closely, but in the end, it's important to remember that no matter what Amy may have done in her marriage, having an affair does not mean that she deserved to die. She was a loving mother, and her children were her life. Ultimately, it is her children who have had to pay the ultimate price. First, with the loss of their mother, followed by the loss of their father, who is now serving a life sentence in prison. But I'd love to hear what you think, so make sure you let me know in the comments. That's it for me tonight. If you want to reach out, you can find me on Facebook at Serial Napper. I also have a Serial Napper true crime discussion group. It's called Serial Society. You can search for it on Facebook, and I'll also have the link in my show notes. I would love to chat with you about this case and all of the other cases that I cover, plus whatever is happening in true crime these days. You can find my audio on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. I post all of my episodes in video format over on YouTube, so go check it out. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would love if you can give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I'm over on X, formerly known as Twitter, at serial_napper, and I post things on TikTok. Serial Napper Nick, that's all one word. Until next time, sweet dreams, stay kind, especially in the comments. Bye.